What's up, guys? Hello and welcome to episode 13 of my Blackburn Rovers Football Manager 2017 career mode. So, as promised, the Arsenal game is next. Obviously, first game of the season, back in the Premier League. We somehow beat Chelsea. And we had Crystal Palace next, who we also beat at Selhurst Park. Craig Conway grabbing the goal for that one from a corner. Ball got whipped in by Charlie Mulgrew. It kind of bounced around a little bit in the box, and Conway got on the end of it. I'd have been happy with a draw coming out of that game, particularly this early on in the season. So to grab the win is honestly amazing. We obviously want to try and hit that 40-point mark around March time to try and guarantee safety in the league. And so far, so good. So we've got 6 points already, 32 more to go. Let's hope we can do it. So it's kind of been suggested that I should try and take episodes a little bit slower. And I know episodes are like pretty long as it is. Like they always end up going over 20 minutes sometimes. But by slower as in progression throughout the season, a little bit slower. And I'll try to do that, but also try and go through small intricacies that I do, which help me be successful. Because obviously, if you want to be a good manager on Football Manager, it's not just about how you perform on the day or your tactics. It's about match preparation as well. It's about training your youngsters, your regens and so forth. And looking back at it, I didn't even go through the regens I got last year, which is, I have to hold my hands up and admit that that's probably bad from me, poor from me. I don't really talk much about what we do in training, which in my opinion plays a big part in our success. And I don't really talk about what players get pissed off and, like I said, little intricacies behind the scenes, like swapping out staff members and things like that you guys don't get to hear about. So first of all, let's take a quick look at tactically what we're doing. Now, we've already kind of discussed tactically what we're doing in the first season. If people kind of like me to go into more details, just let me know, because obviously this is roughly the same tactic that we used in the Championship. And I guess if you've been watching up until now, you kind of probably realised that I kind of tweak it before every game depending on our opponents. Sometimes I tweak it mid-game, like for example when we were 2-1 down against Brentford on the final game of the season in the Championship at half-time, and then I kind of made the odd tweak here and there that won us the game, or at least I personally think helped us win the game. But my main focus for now is mainly going to be match familiarity and training. So I discussed this in the last episode where, at the moment, even though we brought a lot of players in to try and achieve squad depth, and as you can see, we still don't have that big of a squad, really, in comparison to some other squads in the Premier League, we need to try and find the right balance between enough tactical familiarity on the pitch so that shit doesn't hit the fan and utilising new players. So the quickest way to try and get tactical familiarity up is to try and play as many pre-season games as possible, try and get players involved as much as possible, and simultaneously to also have your match preparation on match tactics. So what I'll do is I'll put my general training on balanced and high. I find team cohesion works well for 3 or 4 weeks if you've made a lot of signings. Team cohesion, that just seems to improve, passing success and things like that. The understanding between your players, so that's pretty useful at the start of pre-season if you've made a lot of signings like we have. Match preparation, I'll always have on match tactics until we've achieved 100% tactical familiarity. And there's a chance that even though we've achieved 100% tactical familiarity as a team, the team tactical familiarity is only an average. So as you can see, if we look at individual tactical familiarity, still a lot of our new players haven't really even surpassed the 70% mark. We still have some players like Damien Letalec, who's on like roughly 50. So more than likely after the Arsenal game, we got Coventry, Sunderland, West Brom, Newcastle. So a decent run of what should be easy games, but there's no such thing as an easy game in the Premier League. So that's probably when I'll switch our match preparation to match tactics and try and get them players up to scratch with what we want to do ASAP. So like I said, pre-season, I'll move scheduling to be past the mid-mark towards more match training. That means they do more match preparation. I'll have that on team cohesion for a few weeks, and then once we've surpassed 3 or 4 weeks, I'll change it back to balanced. Otherwise, you really will start to notice significant problems in your performances and players making loads of mistakes because they're just not, doing the basics in training right, because you're just getting them cohesion all the time, probably taking them out to McDonald's to get to know each other. And then for match preparation, I'll always have it on match tactics, unless, this is for the start of the season, by the way, unless we're up against a big team. So, like, pre-Chelsea, I change it to defensive positioning. Pre-Arsenal, I've changed it from match tactics to defensive positioning. I'm more than happy, this early on, to skip a small session of match preparation towards match tactics to focus more on trying to be defensively resilient. And I personally believe that helped us get the clean sheet against Chelsea, and it's something I've always advocated for a few years now on different versions of Football Manager. I think it works really well. And if you actually pay attention to when your assistant manager recommends training to you, a lot of the time when you come up against these really strong opponents, in his scouting report, he will say, I reckon we should focus on defensive positioning. And a lot of people neglect a lot of the time what your assistant manager suggests to you, particularly during games. And I know as a mechanic, it's not brilliant in Football Manager yet, but you can take bits here and bits there from what the game does throw at you that does work really well. At the same time, if you think about it, what does work really well? A lot of the time when your assistant manager suggests something to you during a game that's completely illogical, you don't do it because he sounds like an idiot, right? But you're coming up against Chelsea, you're coming up against Arsenal. You shouldn't even need your assistant manager to kind of whisper in your ear and suggest to you, you know, maybe we should focus on trying to be defensively resilient, because there's no way we're going to potentially... Well, I mean, you could go into a game being Blackburn Rovers against Arsenal or against Chelsea looking to outscore them, but they've got so much quality in their side. Chelsea's striker in Kevin Volland cost more than our entire squad, you know what I mean? So it made sense for us to focus on defensive positioning. So that's one of the things that I'll do. So, for example, after this Arsenal game, I'll just come back in here and switch it back out to match tactics. Once our players have achieved full tactical familiarity, that's when I'll move the scheduling back towards less match training, because we won't need to do as much match training, which will be on match tactics. Once we've achieved 100% familiarity as well, and I switch that there, I'll basically be focusing on defensive positioning all season. The reason for that is, we play a 4-4-2. We've got two strikers up front, and the way that the tactic is currently built, particularly with the attacking mentality that we'll have against a lot of weak teams, we're kind of built to score goals. The fullbacks will get forward, they'll get balls into the box, our wide playmakers will do whatever the hell they want and sometimes get in on the end of crosses. So our main weakness is in the middle of the pitch. So when Jose Mourinho first came into the Premier League, he went with the 4-3-3, and he clearly said, if I have three players in the centre of the park, as opposed to like Sir Alex Ferguson's 4-4-2, that allows us to control possession because my players always have that extra passing triangle. Obviously, the downside to that is the fact that they only have one striker in the form of Drogba, Kesman, or Gudjonsen, for example. So us playing a 4-4-2, now let's bear in mind, Leicester won the league last season playing a 4-4-2. You know, football constantly evolves. So the reason why I want to focus on being more defensively resilient is because we have that less man in midfield, because we have that one less amount of players behind the ball. If we can try and be defensively resilient in a 4-4-2, then because we've got two strikers and the way we're set up, naturally I always feel like we're going to score goals. We will have periods like we did last season in the Championship where it just seemed like we couldn't get more than a goal a game. But I just find in a 4-4-2 that has so many defensive downsides, it makes sense to try and focus on trying to improve yourself defensively. If you're, for example, playing a 4-1-4-1, it then might make sense because you've got so many players behind the ball, and you've got the flank of the four, and then the guy in the middle, then another flank of the four. So many players behind the ball on like a counter mentality or something like that. Then it might actually make sense to try and focus more on attacking preparation. And again, this should change depending on the team you're playing against. From my perspective, I'm an underdog. Let's say in a few seasons' time we've won the Premier League, yeah. Going into a game against a West Brom or going into a game like a Sunderland, it probably makes no sense if I've got a really strong team to be focused on defensive positioning, because a team like West Brom or Sunderland coming up against a Man United, Man City-esque team are going to be looking to park the bus anyways. So you've got to try and break them down, not try and improve yourself defensively because they're going to break you down, because the amount of chances they're going to get, probably most of their goals will probably come from a set piece or something silly like that. You see where I'm coming from? Especially if you're up against a Tony Pulis side like West Brom, it might even make sense if, even though you're a top team, you've got short players, you're pretty poor at defending set pieces. You know a Tony Pulis team, if you give away a free kick, they're going to capitalise from a set piece. It might make sense to choose defending set pieces. So this is it. You've got to be a reactive manager, and a lot of people kind of expect that, like, right, I'm going to make a tactic, and then I'm just going to holiday between games. If you really want to be a great manager, and I'm not saying I'm a great manager by any means, all I'm doing is just, I've played Football Manager for numerous years. Sometimes I struggle, sometimes it goes well, sometimes it starts off going really well, and then kind of goes shit. All I'm trying to do is just try and drop knowledge bombs that will hopefully help people watching the game, because I think I like to think that it's clear by now that, like, YouTubing wise, I kind of really enjoy making these videos. I love playing Football Manager. Played it for years. I used to have a really old Blackburn Rovers save on FM13 that was pretty popular on the old Football Manager Facebook pages, where I think I won the Ballon d'Or with Jordan Rose or something like that. But I'd like to think that it's pretty clear by now that we're in episode 12, and my videos are less really about entertainment, even though I like to think they're entertaining or making people laugh and whatnot, which is a style that I think is great for Football Manager, by the way. There's a lot of YouTubers that do that well out there. But personality-wise, the way I play the game and the way I want to portray my videos, I want to try and show you guys as much as possible, try and teach you as much as possible, particularly like when you go back and look at my Klopp tactical video, and there'll be this tactic that I'm using right now is built around Pellegrini's style of play. I've also built a Conte tactic, you know what I mean? So my aim really is just to try and portray as much knowledge as possible to you guys, so that you guys can learn from watching my videos, take that knowledge away and apply it to your own saves, and hopefully it'll help you in some way, shape or form. So from my perspective, it's more important for me that you guys come away from my videos thinking, yeah, you know, Kai Knight lost that game, but I could kind of see what he was thinking when he made that change at half-time or something like that. And I personally think playing the game that way is a lot more fun, because Football Manager is meant to kind of be a simulation, right? So if you were a manager of a real football club, you wouldn't kind of just sit pre-game and be like, right, lads, we're going to play 4-4-2 with a counter mentality, play direct, and exploit the middle, and then just leave it like that for 90 minutes. That just does not happen, you know what I mean? So I personally think, even though for a lot of the games that you've seen on live comms so far, because we've been playing pretty well, you haven't seen that many reactive changes. But when I have made changes here and there, like the Newcastle game, which was one of the episodes, like the Brentford game, I have tried to go into a little bit of detail about what I'm thinking, what I'm doing, and hopefully you guys like that. And now, as suggested by I think it was Ben in the comments, I am going to try and go through the odd thing here and there, like I've just done today, that'll hopefully help. And, you know, training might not seem that significant, but I personally think it can make or break a tactic in Football Manager, and it gets neglected by a lot of people. So hopefully what I've said, what I've discussed today makes sense. If you're still confused about anything, just ask in the comments below. Right, so I was talking about regens as well. Now, I'm not going to go through all the regens that we got last season, but this guy is the best regen that we ended up with. And there's another one who's a right mid who I'll try to show you as well. So Dan Puckett came through, and he's basically a defensive midfielder. Now, he can also play centre-back and kind of play centre-mid. Now, without a shadow of a doubt, you know, this guy coming in at the age of 16 had potential. A lot of the time, you'll get regens who come into the game, who play a certain position, but you look at their attributes and think, hold on a sec. Even though this guy plays left wing, I think he'd make a better left back. Or even though this guy plays left back, you know what? His tackling's 8, and he's never going to be good enough to compete with a left back that I bring into the side. Because if you've got a 16-year-old on 8 tackling, honestly, from experience, unless you're going to use some kind of editor or something like that, which has happened with YouTubers in the past, but I'm not going to mention names, where they've improved their regens and stuff like that, and people have basically caught them out because the growth has been unrealistic. If you've got a 16-year-old with 8 tackling, no matter how much you train his tackling, you can have the best facilities in the world, yeah? You can get Danny Bloody Alves training him, tutoring him, sorry. His tackling won't really improve more than from 8 to 11, 12, if you're really pushing it. You know what I mean? So yeah, sometimes you'll get a fullback that'll come in as a regen and be like, you know what, he's fast. You know what, he's got a bit of pace on him. He's not that strong. He's got decent work rate and he's got decent crossing and dribbling, but his tackling and marking let him down. His defensive attributes. So Then you've got to analyse, right, do I want to turn this guy into a wing-back? Because he potentially could be a good Victor Moses-esque wing-back. You know, doesn't have to be that good defensively, but he's got the stamina to keep running up and down. Or do I want to turn him into a winger? And when you get regens that come in, honestly, sit down for a second, analyse their attributes and be like, is this guy playing in the right position? If not, the earlier you can get him to train in a new position, the better and the less time it will take him to because of how young he is. In this case, though, with Dan Puckett, we don't really have to worry. As you can see, he plays numerous positions. I look at him straight away. And the main things that pop out, he's 17 now, of course. As well, height is something I pay attention to. That I'll discuss in a bit. So the first few things that I look at are his better attributes. So teamwork, 16, nice. Work rate, 16, nice. Tackling, 13, nice. First touch, 14, nice. Strength, 12. Height, 173. Now, I personally like my defensive midfielders to have a bit of height on them. I always find that it helps when it comes to, especially in the English leagues, when it comes to a goalkeeper taking a goal kick out. If you've got played a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3 and you've got two large midfielders, it always helps you win that ball back as soon as possible because of the height on your player. In this case, unfortunately, though, 173 centimetres, jumping reach 3, so he's a bit of a small defensive midfielder. But for the age of 17, to have 13 tackling, that high work rate and decent strength is not too bad. So what you want in a ball-winning defensive midfielder is decent tackling, decent strength, decent work rate. Just think Conte-style players. Got to be able to tackle, got to be able to work his socks off, got to have a decent amount of pace on him. So in this case, this guy, for me, is playing in the right position. He's got the right attributes, but he could improve. So I take a look at what potentially could improve. I look at this guy and think, he's a defensive midfielder. What does the defensive midfielder category break down into? Obviously, it can break down into defensive midfielder, ball-winning midfielder, halfback, register, deep line playmaker. Is that all of them? I can't remember. And I'm not going to go into detail about what all the different roles are. But in this case, his strengths aren't obviously passing. So the playmaker and register ones, you can already cross out. Here, he's obviously stronger defensively. So you think about halfback. Halfback is more of your Sergio Busquets player. So if you think about Barcelona as 4 at the back, Busquets would be that defensive midfielder. So when the wing-backs would bomb forward, your halfback drops back in line with your 2 centre-backs to create a back 3 to give you that defensive stability in case your opponent's counter because your wing-backs have flown all the way down the pitch. So that's what a halfback is, which immediately tells you that he's got to have centre-back-ish qualities. And I look at this guy and it's like, well, he potentially does have centre-back-ish qualities, but from a personal level, he's not big enough to be a centre-back. I like my centre-backs big. I think it helps with winning the ball in the air. This guy's got dire jumping reach, can't really head the ball, he's very short. He's shorter than me, so yeah, this guy's pretty tiny. And he's pretty small for 17, to be honest. So yeah, but what he does have is work rate, tackling. You know, he looks like the kind of, like I said, Conte-esque player. He'll run around a lot. He can tackle the ball. His marking can improve and so on. And he's got decent work rate, which probably means he'll run around trying to win the ball back, which, you know, is a ball-winning midfielder. So immediately, I see this guy more as a ball-winning midfielder. I analyse what I think he needs to improve. And when I'm analysing regens like this, I don't think, what does this guy need to improve to become a first teamer for me? And a lot of people might not agree with this way of thinking, but the way I look at it is, what do I need to increase on this player to make him a better player so that I can sell him for profit? Because I immediately know, looking at this guy at 17, that he's never going to make my team. You know what I mean? Unless you get an amazing regen coming in, I'll always be like, what are the key attributes I need to work on him in training so that I can get as much money as possible for him? And immediately I know, right, this guy's strengths are being a ball-winning midfielder, being defensive. What will benefit him the most? In this case, in my opinion, it's his marking. If I can get his marking by the time he's like 19, 20, up to about 11, 12, then I reckon I could flog him for maybe 3 or 4 million. You know what I mean? So, development, training, position role in this case, defensive midfielder. Defensive midfielder. Yeah, fine. It doesn't really matter whether I choose defensive midfielder or ball-winning midfielder in this case, because most of the time it covers the same attributes. But what I want to focus on is the additional focus. Now, in previous versions of the game, you used to be able to, for example, choose an additional focus, I think, or a position role. And I always used to tell him, forget your position role, let's just focus on an additional focus. But you don't seem to be able to do that anymore. And you used to be able to choose like the intensity of how hard you wanted him to work on it in training. So I always used to find that like if I had a regen over a year, I could probably get a certain attribute to increase by at least 2 if I tell him to focus on just that attribute and set his workload to heavy. The player would moan a lot, but he's young and he can deal with it. The only downside at the time to doing that was that if you get them to work too hard, they sometimes get injured. And then in the long run, because they're out for so long, their attributes can decrease. And that can sometimes make or break a regen. But they've changed it around now. Like I said, I've not played FM versions since like FM14 properly. But anyways, so additional focus marking. And as you can see, it is slowly but surely increasing. So he came in April, it's now August, and his marking has increased from 8.2 to 8.8. So over 5 months, his marking has increased by 0.6, which really isn't too bad. So hopefully by September, his marking will have hit 9. Now I know it shows 9, but it's not exactly 9 because these attributes are just kind of like rounded up numbers. So it might take him longer than I actually thought to get 12. So 11 might seem like a more realistic target. But from my perspective, another thing you might want to do is get this kid to be tutored. Now, in this case, I'm getting him tutored by Charlie Bull-Grew. As you can see, Charlie Bull-Grew, experienced, great mental stats, great technical stats as well. And when you've got kind of like a special player like this, you really do want to get him tutored. It really does help boost the odd attribute here and there. So that's about it, really. Hopefully, that kind of taught you something. Next time you have a regen intake, look at the better players and think, right, is he really playing in the right position? Should I train him to another position? Then go on to analyse what his best role would be, and then determine how you want to train this lad up. I think maybe come January, I might loan this guy out as well. If I can loan him out somewhere, it's always tough deciding whether you want to loan a player out or not as well, because a team like Blackburn, we still have like Premier League standard facilities. So if your team have better training facilities, then that increases the chance that attributes will increase quicker. But at the same time, if you send him out on loan, he gets more game time. But he'll probably go to a lower league club where the training facilities are worse. So it would probably then... It's a case of whether it hinders his performance or not. Now, what I usually find is if he's a first team or key player member, and you make sure that you can call him back if he's not getting enough games, then it's worth sending him out on loan from the age of like 17, 18 onwards till he's about 21, 22. Otherwise, there's honestly no point sending your regen out to like a lower league team for the sake of being like, oh yes, I'm sending my regen out on loan so he can get some experience, and then he's just a backup player. So in this case, this guy I'd probably look to send him out to like a bottom half championship side or League One-ish side. But if no championship or League One-ish side are willing to basically be like, yeah, he'll be a key player or a first team player for me, I'd rather send him to League Two, where he can gain a bit of confidence, play more games, because by playing games, that'll kind of cancel out the lack of training facilities that he'll have to deal with, if that makes sense. But anyways, I think we've actually overflown this video, so hopefully you kind of learned something. This has all been really spontaneous. And if you want to see the Arsenal game, I'm actually going to make this an episode now, because I didn't think we'd go on for so long. And the next episode will be the Arsenal game. So I'm just going to say bye now and start recording the Arsenal game. But yeah, hopefully that answered some of the requests and stuff like that people wanted. If there's anything you're unsure about, just ask. I'm going to try and integrate these from time to time, but it's kind of difficult to do them if I don't know what people want, if that makes sense. Because a lot of stuff I've been doing for years and seemed kind of obvious for me, but I understand there's a lot of new Football Manager players that might not know, small intricacies like that. So if you really enjoyed that, click the subscribe button. I think we're on 67 subscribers now, which is really awesome, considering like 2 episodes ago I was just saying thanks for 55 subscribers. So shout out to everyone who keeps subscribing, and if you're not subscribed, it would be awesome if you subscribed as well. Like the video, comment, and see you against Arsenal next time.